When I was 20 years old, I was forced to flee my homeland with some change of clothes and only $70 on my shoe. I left my home, my family, my friends, and into the unknown I started my journey. It wasn't always like that. In 2011, I was a wanted man. The government militia had sieged my city. Snipers were everywhere. The power had been cut, and all we could hear outside was the rain. There was no communication or any way of phone service. Munitions exploded overhead as we dashed from building to another building, trying to avoid the checkpoints along the way. Because we knew if we got caught, the best outcome would have been assassination, killing you on the spot. All of this just because I had participated in pro-democracy protest against a brutal dictator called Bashar al-Assad. Let me tell you this, checkpoints in Syria are the worst kind of nightmare for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a kid, a woman, or an old man. They will search you, they would ask you for your ID, and if you're lucky enough, they will let you go. But if you're less fortunate, which is often, they will take you to a place where you will never see the light again. Think of it like playing a Russian roulette, where the outcome isn't death, but torture in a dark room under the ground. My home, Syria, is very rich in its culture. It is known as the cradle of civilizations, and it has at least 6 historic sites that are listed on the UNESCO Heritage List. It is a very diverse place as well, with different races, different religions, all living together peacefully. I grew up in my home with my parents, 1 sister, and 3 brothers. I remember playing outside with my friends, playing soccer. And I still remember the smell of my mom cooking mjaddara and falafel. It is a beautiful country. But when Assad, the father, came to power, there was always that feeling, the knowledge that you're not free. You are simply a resource at the government's disposal. And you are living under a dictator who will use everything from torture to terrorism to control his own population. And believe me, I know, in all police states, there is always that darkness that looms over everything. It reminds you that the walls have ears. And in Syria, it was no different. It is a wonderful place until it's not. And it was a beautiful place until it was not. And I guess that's what led the population to the uprising. Many of you probably know the story by now, after almost 8 years of war. How everything started in Tunisia, in North Africa, and how people stood up for freedom and democracy. And then, after a few months, the revolution spread to Egypt and then to us in Syria. You know, for almost 40 years, we were living under pressure. Everything is being monitored by the regime. It makes you feel that Big Brother is watching you. And honestly, people were really scared. But the younger generations decided we had enough of Assad's dictatorship and corruption. We didn't want the walls to have ears. So we went down to the streets unarmed, naive. But we were hopeful and chanting for a new beginning. We never thought that our own army that we paid for is going to be our enemy. And the darkness that's looming over everything became anything but quiet. After I escaped Syria, I tried many places to settle down. I kept traveling the Middle East country by country, trying to find a new place. that I can call home. After a few months, I decided on Jordan. And in Jordan, I was safe and secure. But there was no work for me, and I couldn't afford to go back to school. I knew ultimately the path I was on offered me no future, and it gave me no hope. You see, I really wanted to go back to school. I had been studying computer engineering back home before the war started. I really wanted to live like any young person on this planet, with dreams of future that included an eventual family, friends, and meaningful work. I wanted to believe that despite my circumstances, I still might have the chance to change the world. And so, from my room, I started emailing as many schools as I could. Not only in Jordan, but all of the neighboring countries as well, and a few more. I was praying for one opportunity, but I got no response. Until from one. From what I considered to be the most unlikely of places. Here in Florida, there was that small Catholic school that responded. They listened to me, and they heard my story. They opened their hearts and minds to me. They were the human and the humanitarian. St. Leo University offered me a Muslim exile with bad reputation for causing trouble, at least to Assad, according to Assad and some media, a ticket to get out of the chaos in the Middle East. This Catholic school believed in me and offered me a full scholarship and a great opportunity to reclaim my future. I remember my first day in the States like it was yesterday. My flight landed in Miami International at 1:13 p.m. I was alone, I had no one waiting for me, and I had no idea where to go. But as I looked around, I felt the greatness in myself. Wow, what a moment. I felt peace inside me. I'm finally in a place where I can see myself having a future. And I knew this is the right place to be. My first meal was at Chipotle. And with a broken English, I ordered tacos. I had never eaten tacos before because we don't have it in the Middle East, but it was very tasty and delicious. I still remember the taste. The restaurant was full of people of all races, different backgrounds, different cultures and tribes, from all over the world. And they're all sharing this new country that they all now called home. The history of the United States is a very short one, but it is filled with stories of people like me, people in struggle, fighting their dictators, in search of freedom. The King of England, for example. We all grow up thinking that home would be where we are born. But sometimes, time changes. And sometimes we feel strangers in our own lands. Today, like so many others before me, I feel blessed to have a new home. A home that's many miles away from where I was born. And I really miss being part of a family. But it is a home that embraces the freedom I could never have there. Freedom of speech, diverse society, and endless opportunities. You see, from my experience as a refugee who traveled multiple places trying to find a new home where I can start a new life, I believe home isn't just where your heart is. Home is where you can feel safe and respected. Home is where you can have dignity and rights. Home means freedom from fear and oppression. It means having choices. Home is where you can have hope and a future. And for me, home is the American dream. Thank you.